The text message from Mom felt like a punch to the gut. We need to talk. Family meeting tonight. Important news about the house. I'm Zoe, and that message marked the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. Standing in my childhood home's kitchen 12 hours later, I wished I'd never shown up. We're selling the house, Dad announced, his voice steady as if he were discussing the weather. Caesar has an amazing business opportunity, and we're going to help him make it happen. The wooden spoon I'd been clutching, the same one I'd used to help Mom bake countless birthday cakes, clattered to the floor. You're what? Caesar leaned against the doorframe, that familiar smirk playing on his lips. It's a game changer, sis. Premium coffee shops across the city. We're talking artisanal blends, prime locations. Stop, I held up my hand. You're selling our home, the house we grew up in, for coffee shops? Mom stepped forward, her hands twisting her wedding ring like she always did when nervous. Honey, we've discussed this thoroughly. Caesar has a solid business plan. Solid? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Like the food truck venture last year? Or the cryptocurrency investment that emptied his savings? That's not fair, Caesar pushed off the doorframe. This is different. I've got investors lined up. Who? The same guys who convinced you to sink 20 grand into that bogus real estate scheme? Zoe. Dad's voice carried that warning tone I remembered from childhood. Your brother has matured. We believe in his vision. I turned to the window, staring at the maple tree I'd climbed countless times. The treehouse Dad built us still clung to its branches, weathered but standing. What about my room, my dark room? All those photographs I've been storing here? We'll help you move everything, Mom offered quickly. You can store them at your apartment. My apartment that's barely big enough for me? I spun around. This house isn't just property, it's our history. The marks on the wall showing how tall we grew. The dent in the living room where Caesar crashed his skateboard. The garden where we buried Rusty. It's just a house, Caesar said dismissively. We need to think about the future, not cling to the past. Something snapped inside me. Just a house? This is where we learned to ride bikes, where we had every Christmas morning, where we held each other after Grandma died. But sure, let's trade all that for your latest get-rich-quick scheme. Zoe. Mom reached for my arm, but I pulled away. How much? I demanded. How much are you selling it for? Dad cleared his throat. The offer is $450. I'll buy it, I said instantly. I have savings. I can get a loan. We've already accepted their offer, Dad cut me off. The papers are signed. The room spun slightly. You didn't even give me a chance? Your own daughter? Honey, Mom's voice cracked. We didn't think. No, you didn't think. Not about me, anyway. I grabbed my purse from the counter. When do the new owners take possession? 30 days, Dad answered quietly. I nodded, fighting back tears. Perfect. Just enough time to watch another piece of my life get sacrificed for Caesar's dreams. Don't be dramatic, Caesar rolled his eyes. I'll make it up to you. When the business takes off, save it, I snapped. I don't want your promises or your overpriced coffee. I want my home. Zoe, please, Mom called as I headed for the door. Don't leave like this. I paused at the threshold, my hand on the doorknob. You know what hurts the most? You didn't even ask me. Didn't consider how this would affect me. It's always been about Caesar, his needs, his dreams, his mistakes. Well, congratulations. You finally managed to sell the last piece of my childhood to fund another one of his fantasies. That's not fair, Cesar protested. Life's not fair, I replied, meeting his eyes. But don't worry, big brother. I'm sure this time will be different. This time your brilliant plan will work out perfectly. And if it doesn't, well, there's always Mom and Dad's retirement fund to fall back on, right? I walked out before they could respond, slamming the door behind me. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. Through the windshield, I could see the house next door, old Mrs. Patterson's place. The for sale sign had gone up last week. An idea began to form in my mind. Maybe I couldn't save my childhood home, but I could do something else. something that would make them all understand exactly what they'd thrown away. I pulled out my phone and dialed my realtor's number. Hey, Sarah, remember that property we discussed? The Patterson house? I want to make an offer. Today. You did what? Autumn nearly choked on her wine. We were sitting on my tiny apartment balcony, the evening air thick with summer heat and the weight of my decision. I bought Mrs. Patterson's house, I repeated, swirling the red wine in my glass. The offer was accepted this morning. Okay. Autumn set her glass down carefully. And you're planning to turn it into a women's retreat center? Just like that? Why not? It's perfect. 5 bedrooms, huge garden, that amazing sunroom. I leaned forward. Plus, it's right next door to my family's house. Every time Caesar looks out his precious coffee shop window, he'll see what I built from scratch. Girl, Autumn's eyes widened. That's either brilliant or crazy, maybe both. My phone buzzed, another message from Mom. I ignored it, like I had the previous dozen. You should see the property, I continued. I'm meeting the inspector tomorrow. Want to come? Obviously. Someone needs to make sure you don't completely lose your mind. She paused. Have you actually run the numbers on this? I pulled out my laptop. I've been working on nothing else for the past week. Look. As I showed her the spreadsheets, business plan, and market research, Autumn's skepticism slowly transformed into interest. There's nothing like this in the area, I explained. Women need a place to reset, to heal, to figure out their next steps. I can offer workshops, temporary housing, counseling services. Using your photography studio space, Autumn finished, catching on. Art therapy. Exactly. I closed the laptop. I've already talked to 3 potential investors. They love the concept. The sliding door creaked open, and my neighbor Rachel poked her head out. Sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you really starting a women's retreat? That's the plan. Rachel stepped onto the balcony. My sister could have used something like that last year when she was going through her divorce. She ended up sleeping on my couch for 3 months because she had nowhere else to go. See? I gestured to Rachel. This is exactly why... My phone buzzed again, this time with Caesar's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call. You'll have to talk to them eventually, Autumn said gently. No, I really don't. I stood up and walked to the railing. They made their choice. Now I'm making mine. Rachel cleared her throat. Well, if you need any help with the retreat, I'm a licensed social worker. I'd love to be involved. I turned back, surprised. Really? Absolutely. I can help set up support programs, maybe run some group sessions. The next morning, Autumn and I met the inspector at Mrs. Patterson's house. Standing in the grand entryway, with sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, I felt a surge of certainty. The bones are good, the inspector said, tapping the walls. You'll need to update the electrical in the east wing, and the roof needs work, but overall... A familiar voice cut through from outside. Zoe, what are you doing here? Caesar stood on the sidewalk, coffee cup in hand, staring up at the house. Buying property, I called back. Isn't that what our family does now? He jogged up the front steps. Come on, sis, don't be like this. Let's talk. About what? How you convinced Mom and Dad to sell my childhood home for your latest scheme? It's not a scheme. I've got everything planned out. Look. He reached for his phone. Save your pitch deck, I cut him off. I'm busy with my own business plan. His eyes narrowed. What business plan? You'll see soon enough. I turned to the inspector. Shall we continue the tour? Zoe, Caesar grabbed my arm. What are you up to? I yanked free. Creating something meaningful, something that actually helps people. But I wouldn't expect you to understand that concept. Autumn stepped between us. I think you should leave, Caesar. He backed away, hands raised. Fine, but this isn't over. No, I agreed, watching him retreat down the walkway. It's just beginning. Back inside, Autumn whistled low. Well, that was intense. Good, I said, running my hand along the vintage wallpaper. I want him to worry. I want them all to see what they threw away. Just remember, Autumn cautioned, the best revenge is living well. I smiled, already envisioning the transformation this house would undergo. Trust me, I plan to live extremely well, and I'm going to help other women do the same. The inspector cleared his throat. Shall we check out the second floor? As we climbed the grand staircase, I could feel the house's potential humming through my fingers on the banister. This wasn't just about getting back at my family anymore. This was about creating something bigger than myself, something lasting. And if it happened to make Caesar and my parents uncomfortable in the process, well, that was just karma doing its work. The contractor just quit. I slumped onto a dust-covered chair in what would eventually be the retreat's main office. Said the electrical work is more complicated than he thought? Rachel looked up from the stack of permit applications spread across the floor. That's the third one this month. I know. I rubbed my temples, trying to ward off an approaching headache. The renovation was already 2 weeks behind schedule, and my savings were draining faster than expected. A knock on the front door echoed through the empty house. "We're closed," I called out, not in the mood for another nosy neighbor asking about construction noise. "I saw your sign outside," a voice responded. "About the women's retreat?" Rachel and I exchanged glances. I hadn't put up any sign yet. Curious, I walked to the door. A young woman stood on the porch, hugging herself despite the warm weather. Her eye makeup was smudged, and she carried a small duffel bag. "I'm Gemma," she said quickly, as if afraid I'd shut the door. "I know you're not open yet, but I saw the workers here, and I just really need a place to stay." "We're still under construction," I explained. "Nothing's ready. Please." Her voice cracked. "I can't go back to my apartment. He'll be waiting." The desperation in her eyes hit me like a physical force. I recognized that look, the same one I'd seen in the mirror countless times after my family's betrayal, but deeper, more urgent. "Come in," I heard myself say. "The kitchen's somewhat functional. We can at least make coffee." 20 minutes later, Gemma sat at our makeshift break table, hands wrapped around a steaming mug. "I left this morning while he was at work. 3 years of—" She trailed off. "I just couldn't do it anymore." Rachel, in full social worker mode, was already making calls to domestic violence shelters. I watched Gemma's hands trembling around the mug and made a decision. "The West Wing bedroom is finished," I said. "It's basic, but it has a bed and a working bathroom. You can stay there while we figure things out." Rachel shot me a warning look. "Zoe, we don't have the proper permits yet. Then we'll get them faster." I turned back to Gemma. No one should have to go back to a place that doesn't feel safe. Later that evening, as I was sorting through construction quotes, I heard voices outside. Through the window, I saw Caesar talking to one of the remaining contractors in the driveway. I stormed out. "What do you think you're doing?" Caesar spun around, all innocent smiles. "Just asking about the renovation timeline, trying to plan the coffee shop opening, you know? By interfering with my contractors?" "Interfering? I'm networking, sis. That's what successful business people do." "Get off my property." "Your property?" He laughed. "This whole thing is a joke. You don't know the first thing about running a business." "No?" I stepped closer. "At least I'm not burning through our parents' retirement fund on overpriced coffee beans." His smile faltered. "That's not—" "Leave. Now. And stop harassing my contractors." After he left, the contractor approached me awkwardly. "Look, maybe this job is more than we can handle. I'll pay you 15% above your quote," I said quickly. "Just please don't quit." He hesitated, then nodded. "Deal. But your brother mentioned some potential zoning issues." "I'll handle the zoning." I was already dialing Rachel's number as I walked back inside. I found Gemma in the kitchen, organizing our meager supply of dishes. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I want to help." She placed a mug in the cabinet. "This place, what you're doing here, it matters?" "My brother doesn't think so." "I saw him outside." Gemma's voice hardened. "Men like that, they can't stand seeing women build something without them." I looked at her sharply. "You heard our conversation?" She nodded. "Reminded me of my ex. Always trying to tear down anything I was proud of." Something clicked in my mind. Would you be interested in a job? We need someone to coordinate with contractors, manage supplies. Really? Her eyes lit up. But I don't have experience. You have perspective. That's worth more. That night, reviewing budget spreadsheets in my apartment, I realized Gemma's arrival had shifted something. This wasn't just about getting back at my family anymore. It was about creating a space where women like Gemma could rebuild their lives. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Please call us. We're worried about you. I typed back, don't be. I'm finally building something that matters. Then I turned back to my spreadsheets, determination renewed. Let Caesar try his sabotage. He had no idea how strong women could be when they stood together. There's a zoning board meeting tomorrow, Mom announced, appearing at my construction site unannounced. Your father and I will be there to support Caesar's permit application. I kept hammering, pretending the nail I was driving into the new bookshelf was my frustration. Of course you will. Zoe, please. This feud has to end. She stepped closer, dodging a pile of lumber. We're still family. Family? The hammer slipped, nearly catching my thumb. Is that what you call selling my childhood home without even consulting me? The coffee shop will be amazing. Caesar's really thought it through this time. Mrs. Foster? Gemma appeared in the doorway. The inspector's here for the electrical certification. Mom's eyes narrowed. You already have people staying here? Without proper permits? She works here, I said firmly, and our permits are in order. Are they? She pulled out her phone. Because Caesar mentioned some concerns about... Stop. I set the hammer down hard. Just stop. Caesar's concerns are nothing but attempts to sabotage my project because he's worried about competition. Competition? This is a women's shelter. It's a retreat center, I corrected. And yes, competition. Because while he's selling overpriced lattes, I'll be actually helping people rebuild their lives. The inspector appeared behind Gemma, clipboard in hand. Mom took the hint and left, but not before saying, We'll see you at the zoning meeting. The next day, I sat in the municipal building's stuffy meeting room, watching Caesar charm the zoning board with his polished presentation about revitalizing the neighborhood with his artisanal coffee empire. And as you can see, he gestured to his slides, the property's current residential zoning classification would be better served by converting to commercial use. I gripped my folder tighter, waiting for my turn. Mom and Dad sat in the front row, beaming at their golden boy. Finally, the board chairman called my name. I walked to the podium, spreading out my documentation. Board members, I'm here to oppose the rezoning application and present my own proposal for the adjacent property. I met Caesar's startled gaze. The neighborhood doesn't need another coffee shop. It needs a safe space for women in crisis. I detailed our plans, counseling services, temporary housing, job training programs. With each point, I saw the board members' interest grow. Furthermore, I continued, we've already secured partnerships with local mental health providers and employment agencies. Excuse me, Caesar interrupted, but my sister's project lacks proper licensing for residential facilities. Actually, I pulled out a document. We received our provisional license yesterday. Unlike some businesses, we did our homework before making promises. A murmur rippled through the room. Dad's smile had disappeared. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Foster, your rezoning application could impact both properties. Given the circumstances, we'll need to review. This is ridiculous! Caesar stood up. She's only doing this to spite me. Spite? I laughed. You really think everything revolves around you, don't you? Children, please. Mom started to rise. No, Mom. Let him speak. I turned to Caesar. Tell everyone how you convinced our parents to sell our home for your latest get-rich-quick scheme. Tell them about the contractors you tried to poach, the rumors you've been spreading about our permits. I was protecting our family's investment. Caesar's face reddened. This neighborhood needs upgrading, not some depressing shelter. It's not depressing, a voice called from the back. Gemma stood up, shoulders straight. It's hope. When I left my abusive ex, Zoe's retreat gave me a chance to start over. How many lattes can do that? Silence fell over the room. The chairman cleared his throat again. Given the complexity of these proposals, we'll need time to review both applications. Meeting adjourned. Outside, Dad caught up to me. Zoe, this vendetta has gone too far. Vendetta? I shook my head. Look around, Dad. See those women? I pointed to where Gemma stood with 2 other retreat residents. They're why I'm doing this. Not everything is about Caesar. But the family made its choice. I stepped back. Now I'm making mine, and unlike Caesar's coffee shop dreams, I'm actually helping people. Mom appeared at his side. Honey, please, save it. I turned away. I'll see you at the next meeting. Bring your checkbook. Caesar might need more startup capital when this falls through. Walking to my car, I heard Gemma call out, "That was amazing!" I managed a smile, but my hands were shaking. Standing up to my family had cost more than I'd expected, but seeing their faces when Gemma spoke, that made it worth it. My phone buzzed with a text from Autumn. How'd it go? I typed back, "War declared, battle lines drawn, but we're winning." Because this wasn't just about zoning anymore. This was about proving that sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well, it's living purposefully. Smile. The photographer from the local newspaper adjusted her camera. One more with the whole group. 3 months after the zoning battle, our retreat center was officially open. 20 women, including Gemma, gathered on the front steps. The renovated Victorian house gleamed behind us, its fresh paint and new sign catching the morning sun. "This is surreal," Rachel whispered beside me. "We're actually trending on social media." The article about our opening had gone viral overnight. Local woman transforms family drama into haven for abuse survivors. The headline alone had brought in dozens of inquiries. "Ms. Foster?" A reporter raised his hand. "Your brother's coffee shop opens next door next week. Any comments?" "This isn't about my brother," I replied firmly. "It's about these women and their stories, like Maria here, who's starting her own business after taking our entrepreneurship workshop." Maria stepped forward, beaming. "The retreat gave me confidence to pursue my catering dreams. Next month, I'm cooking for my first corporate event." More questions followed, but movement across the street caught my eye. Mom stood on our old house's porch, watching. She'd aged somehow in these past months, her hair grayer, her shoulders more stooped. "Excuse me," I said to the reporters. "Gemma, could you handle the rest of the questions?" Crossing the street felt like crossing an ocean. Mom didn't move as I approached. "The house looks beautiful," she said quietly. "You've done amazing work." "Thanks." I stood awkwardly, hands in my pockets. "How's Caesar's shop coming along?" She hesitated. "Having some supplier issues. The premium beans he ordered didn't arrive." "Of course they didn't." "Zoe, please." She turned to face me. "I know we hurt you, but seeing what you've built here, maybe it was meant to be this way." "Meant to be?" I laughed. "Mom, you sold my home without even talking to me. And look what you did with that pain." She gestured to the retreat. "You turned it into something beautiful, something meaningful." Before I could respond, Gemma called from across the street. "Zoe, the TV crew is here." "TV crew?" Mom's eyes widened. "Local news," I explained. "They're doing a feature on women-owned businesses in the area." "That's wonderful." She paused. "Caesar tried to get them interested in the coffee shop, but what?" "They said artisanal coffee wasn't newsworthy enough." I bit back a smile. "I should go." "Wait," Mom grabbed my arm. "There's something you should know. Your father and we're worried about Caesar's finances. The shop's renovations cost more than expected and—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "I don't want to know. Whatever hole he's dug himself into, it's not my problem." Back at the retreat, the TV crew was setting up in our newly finished community room. Women gathered around, sharing stories of how they'd found us. "The photography classes helped me see beauty again," one said into the microphone. "I learned to trust myself here," added another. Gemma, now our official program coordinator, organized everyone for the segment. "Zoe, they want to interview you last. Something about saving the best for final cut." The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Diana, sat across from me. "Your story is compelling," she said. "Converting family conflict into community support. Mind if we dig deeper?" "Actually, I do." I straightened my shoulders. The conflict that led me here isn't the story. These women are. Their resilience, their courage to start over. That's what matters. Diana smiled. Even better. Tell me about them. For the next hour, I shared our success stories. The domestic violence survivor who became a counselor. The divorced mother who started her own online business. The elderly woman who found community after losing her husband. One last question, Diana said. Your brother's coffee shop opens next door soon. Any message for him? I looked out the window at our old house, at Mom still standing on the porch. Just this. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed leads you to what you were meant to do all along. After the crews left, Gemma brought me coffee, not from an artisanal shop, but our simple kitchen machine. The waiting list is up to 30 women now, she said. We might need to think about expanding. Expanding? I nearly choked on my coffee. The property 2 doors down just went up for sale. Her eyes sparkled. Just saying. I watched the sunset paint our retreat in golden light, thinking about Mom's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was meant to be. My phone buzzed, a text from Autumn. Just saw the news crew. You're going to be famous. I typed back, not me, the retreat, the women, their stories. Because that's what mattered now. Not revenge, not family drama, but the lives we were helping rebuild, one day at a time. Though I had to admit, the fact that we were thriving while Caesar struggled did feel a little like karma. The pounding on my door at 2 a.m. could only mean trouble. I opened it to find Dad, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Caesar's in trouble, he said without preamble. Big trouble. When isn't he? I started to close the door, but Dad's next words froze me. He used the coffee shop as collateral for a loan, a high-interest loan from people you don't want to owe money to. Of course he did. I leaned against the doorframe. How much? 200,000. The number hit like a physical blow. Tell me you and Mom didn't co-sign. His silence was answer enough. Jesus, Dad. I ran my hands through my hair. The house money wasn't enough? You had to risk everything else too? He had a plan. He always has a plan, I was shouting now, not caring about my neighbors. And you always fall for it. The suppliers backed out, Dad continued. The equipment costs doubled. He got desperate. And now what? You want me to help clean up his mess? Again? A text lit up my phone. Gemma. Emergency at the retreat. Pipe burst in the east wing. I have to go, I told Dad. Real problems to solve. Zoe, please. These aren't nice people he borrowed from. They're coming tomorrow for their first payment. Then he better start brewing a lot of coffee. At the retreat, water was pouring through the ceiling. Gemma and 3 residents were already moving furniture, while Rachel coordinated with an emergency plumber on the phone. Second floor bathroom, Gemma explained, handing me a bucket. The plumber's on his way. We worked through the night, salvaging what we could. By dawn, the leak was fixed, but the damage was extensive. Insurance should cover it, Rachel said, surveying the wet walls. But we'll need to relocate the women in those rooms temporarily. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Calls from Mom, texts from Dad. Finally, one from Caesar. I screwed up. Bad. Please help. Everything okay? Gemma asked, noticing my expression. Family drama. I showed her the text. Caesar got involved with loan sharks. Shit. She whistled low. What are you going to do? Nothing. He made his bed. Zoe! Mom's voice rang through the retreat's front hall. She hurried in, mascara streaked down her face. They're at the coffee shop, right now. They're taking everything. I followed her next door. Through the coffee shop's windows, I could see men in dark suits removing equipment while Caesar argued frantically. You can't do this, he was saying as we entered. I just need more time. Time's up, one of the men said calmly. Should have read the contract better. I'll call the police, Mom threatened. Go ahead. The man smiled. Show them the loan documents you all signed. I watched my brother's dream being dismantled piece by piece. Part of me felt satisfaction, karma finally catching up. But another part remembered the little boy who used to protect me from playground bullies. Wait, I heard myself say. What would it take to stop this, right now? The man turned. First payment's 50 grand. Due now. I can have it in an hour, I said, if you leave the equipment. Everyone stared at me. Sis, Cesar's voice cracked. You don't have to. Shut up, I turned to the man. Deal? He nodded. 1 hour. At the bank, withdrawing nearly half my emergency fund, Cesar wouldn't look at me. This is a loan, I said firmly, with real paperwork and legal terms. You'll pay me back every cent. I know. He swallowed hard. I don't deserve... No, you don't. But Mom and Dad don't deserve to lose everything because of you, again. The coffee shop's failing anyway, he admitted. Even with all the equipment, I can't compete with the chains. Then sell it. Pay off your debts. Get a real job. Back at the retreat, Gemma was organizing a cleanup crew for the water damage. She took one look at my face and pulled me aside. You helped him, didn't you? I nodded. After everything he did? I didn't do it for him. I watched the women working together, supporting each other. I did it because that's what we're about here, helping people find better ways forward, even if those people sometimes don't deserve it. You're a better person than me, Gemma said. No, I smiled tiredly, just finally learning the difference between revenge and redemption. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom. Thank you for everything. I didn't respond. Some wounds were still too fresh, some bridges still too fragile. But maybe, just maybe, this was a start toward something new. Come on, Gemma tugged my arm. These walls won't dry themselves. And so I turned back to the work that mattered, leaving Cesar to figure out his own path forward. For once, I had nothing left to prove. The Governor's Office of Women's Initiatives wants to use our retreat as a model for the state program, Rachel announced, bursting into my office. They're sending a representative next week. 6 months after the coffee shop disaster, our retreat had become more successful than I'd ever imagined. Cesar had sold his failed business to a local restaurant group, and now I sat watching moving trucks pack up the last of his equipment. Earth to Zoe? Rachel waved her hand in front of my face. Did you hear what I said? State funding. Sorry, yes. I turned back to my desk. It's just weird, watching them dismantle everything he worked for. You mean everything he stole from your childhood home for? Yeah. I stood up. Speaking of which, where are we on the expansion plans? Rachel spread out blueprints across my desk. The bank approved our loan yesterday. We can start renovations on the new property next month. The front door chime rang, and Gemma's voice carried up the stairs. Zoe, your mother's here! Mom stood in the entrance hall, clutching her purse like a shield. The moving trucks. She gestured next door. I just couldn't watch. He's fine, Mom. The restaurant group hired him as a manager. I know. She looked around the retreat's newly renovated interior. This place... It's amazing, honey. The women I see coming and going, their faces when they leave. You've created something special. Thanks. I hesitated. Would you like a tour? We've made some changes since you were here last. As we walked through the house, Mom stopped at our wall of success stories, photos of women who'd graduated from our program, starting new lives. Is that Maria? She pointed to a picture of our former resident cutting a ribbon at her new catering business. She's handling all our event food now, I said proudly, and teaching cooking classes twice a week. Zoe, Gemma called from the office. The local business association is on the phone. They want you to speak at their annual dinner. Mom smiled. You're becoming quite the celebrity. Not me. The retreat. The women. I paused at the window overlooking our garden, where residents were tending the vegetable beds. Everything that happened, losing the house, Caesar's schemes, it led to this, to helping people find their strength. I'm sorry, Mom said suddenly, for not seeing it sooner. Your father and I, we were so focused on helping Caesar that we couldn't see how much we were hurting you. Mom. No, let me finish. She touched my arm. Watching you build this place, seeing the lives you're changing, you're the strong one. You always were. The front door chimed again. Caesar walked in, looking different in his restaurant manager uniform. Hey, he said awkwardly. Last of the equipment's gone. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. First payment, as promised. I took the envelope. You're really doing it? Working a regular job? Turns out I'm pretty good at managing other people's businesses. He attempted a smile. Better than running my own anyway. Caesar's been volunteering with our job training program, Gemma added, appearing with a stack of files. Teaching business basics, what not to do. Really? I looked at my brother with new eyes. Figured I owed you more than just money. He shrugged. These women, their stories, it puts things in perspective, you know? The doorbell chimed once more. Diana, the TV reporter, strode in with a camera crew. Ready for the follow-up piece? She asked. The local success story expands statewide angle is gold. Actually, I said, I have a better story. About redemption, family, and finding purpose in unexpected places. I looked at Mom and Caesar. Would you like to be part of it? The resulting segment went viral faster than the first. Family Feud transforms into community victory became our new narrative. Footage of Caesar teaching business classes, Mom organizing fundraisers, and our expanding programs painted a picture of healing that resonated far beyond our local community. That evening, standing in the garden with Autumn, I watched the sunset paint the old Victorian in golden light. Did you ever imagine this? She asked. When you first bought the place? Never. I smiled as a group of residents walked past, laughing together. I wanted revenge. Instead, I found purpose. And now you're changing lives. We're changing lives, I corrected. All of us. My phone buzzed. An email from the governor's office confirming their visit. Below it, a text from Dad. Proud of you, sweetheart. Always have been. I looked at our retreat, then at my old home next door. The pain of losing it had faded, replaced by something stronger. The knowledge that sometimes our greatest losses lead to our most important discoveries. Come on, I told Autumn. We've got work to do. Because this wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to every woman who walked through our doors, seeking a new beginning. And somehow, that was better than any revenge I could have planned. Ready? Gemma stood beside me at the front door of my childhood home. Through the window, I could see my family gathered in the living room. Not really. I gripped the small box in my hands tighter. But it's time. Inside, Mom was arranging cookies on a plate while Dad and Caesar hung a congratulations banner. The governor's award for community excellence sat on the mantel, right where my childhood photos used to be. There's our woman of the hour, Dad called out. The banner's crooked, I said, trying to steady my voice. Some things never change, Mom laughed. Remember when we hung your graduation banner? I remember. I set the box on the coffee table. That's actually why I wanted everyone here today. Autumn slipped in behind us, camera ready. She'd been documenting the retreat's journey from the start. Before we celebrate the award, I began, I need to return something. I opened the box, revealing a stack of old photographs. These are all the pictures I took from the house before you sold it. I've been holding on to them like weapons. Caesar shifted uncomfortably. Sis. Let me finish. I pulled out the first photo. All of us at the beach, much younger, much happier. I've been so angry about losing this house that I forgot what made it special wasn't the building. It was us, even when we were mess. Mom wiped her eyes. We were quite a mess, weren't we? Still are, I smiled. But different now. I handed each of them a photo. To Mom, the picture of us baking Christmas cookies. To Dad, the one of him building our treehouse. To Cesar, a shot of him teaching me to ride a bike. The retreat taught me something, I continued. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means building something new from what's left. Speaking of building, Gemma interjected, right on cue. Should we tell them? I nodded. The state funding came through. We're opening 3 new retreat locations. 3? Caesar's eyes widened. That's amazing. And I took a deep breath. We want to use the old coffee shop space for our first youth center. For teenage girls who need support before crisis hits. The room fell silent. The coffee shop space, still owned by our parents, had been sitting empty since Caesar's business failed. It's yours, Dad said immediately. No. I shook my head. Not given, bought. Properly this time. I have the paperwork ready. Mom started to protest, but I held up my hand. This needs to be business, not family. We've learned that lesson, right? Caesar laughed. Yeah, the hard way. But, I added, I would like my family involved. Mom, your fundraising skills are incredible. Dad, we need someone to oversee the renovation. And Caesar, let me guess, business classes on what not to do. Actually, we need a proper operations manager, someone who's learned from their mistakes and knows how to help others avoid them. His jaw dropped. Are you serious? Professional salary, benefits, the works. Rachel's drawn up a contract. I met his eyes. Think you can handle working for your little sister? I'd be honored. His voice cracked slightly. Autumn snapped pictures as we hugged, capturing the moment our family's healing became official. Later, standing in what would become the youth center, I found the old height marks on the wall, still visible under layers of paint. My fingers traced the notches, Caesar's growth spurts, my steady climb. Keep them, Mom said behind me. Let the girls add their own marks. Show them how growth happens slowly, but it happens. Like us? She hugged me. Like us. Outside, the retreat's lights glowed warmly in the dusk. Women moved between buildings, carrying books, laptops, dreams. In the garden, a new resident was crying on Gemma's shoulder while Rachel sat nearby, ready to help plan next steps. You did it, Autumn said, reviewing her photos. You turned pain into purpose. We did it, I corrected. All of us. My phone buzzed. Another girl seeking shelter. Another story waiting to be rewritten. As I read the message, I realized something. The house I'd fought so hard to save had given me something far more valuable than memories. It had given me a mission. Ready to change another life? Gemma called out. Always, I replied, heading back to the retreat. Behind me, my family began planning the youth center renovation, their voices mixing with the sounds of women rebuilding their lives. This wasn't the revenge I'd planned. It was better. Because sometimes the best way to heal old wounds isn't to get even, but to get better. To build something so beautiful from the ashes of what was lost that even those who hurt you want to be part of it. And that's a victory sweeter than any revenge could ever be.